a big surprise when I got contacted by the Smithsonian. I had an email in my inbox just saying, hey, it's Sarah and Mary from the Smithsonian, and we're going to be at the Iowa State Fair. We'd love to talk butter sculpting. I thought they wanted tools or, just to like find out more about the craft that they would be doing a display for, but literally they wanted a butter cow. And so it was really exciting to work with them through that process. I was so excited. I love museums. I love the Smithsonian. So we jumped right in. Our family went that first November in 2023 to DC. I'd never been to Washington, DC, or actually been to the Smithsonian Museum. So we went for a visit. We got a tour of the Renwick, which kind of kicked off the process. And then over the 2 years, it was a few visits, several Zoom meetings talking to designers about what the exhibit would look like and the size and the scale. They were wonderful people to work with, like the entire staff. It was phenomenal to be able to work in a museum setting. We're used to working in state fairs where it's a little bit different, and like here at the Iowa State Fair, the equipment has been here for, we've had a butter cow for over 100 years, but this equipment here that we're standing in now has been here for 80 years or more. So the process of like helping to build and design a cooler space hasn't been something that I necessarily have had to work on in the past. So that was a really fun thing to be a part of.
Yeah, so is it about the same size as our butter cow right here?
It is about the same size. So our butter cow here at the Iowa State Fair is a show cow. So if you were to go to a dairy show, the cows would have a lead on and they would keep their necks up higher. But when a cow is just like wandering through the barn, they're gonna have their head lower. So the cow at the Smithsonian is different in that way. Her head is lower, but she's about the same size. And also a Jersey, same breed.
Gotcha. Do they have names?
This cow is named Pepper.
Okay.
A friend of mine, Brogan, who comes to visit the display every year, names the cow. And she said Pepsi's her favorite drink and Dr. Pepper's her second favorite drink. So this cow is Pepper. At the Smithsonian, they asked for a name of the exhibit. So the exhibit is named Curious Regard. And it's named for the idea of being able to look like, you know how animals will like gaze at you, or like, especially I think cats, cows are very curious and they'll watch you, they'll kind of watch your mannerisms, they'll like take it in. And I feel like that is true of dairy cows for sure. And I feel like as humans, we could spend more time being curious about each other and like noticing how we're the same, even though maybe at first glance we're different. And so that was why we named her Curious Regard, hoping that people would take a minute to learn about a new art form if they hadn't seen a butter sculpture before, but also to reflect on how we can all be more curious in our lives. The name that the staff has lovingly given the cow at the Smithsonian is Calpurnicus sweetgrass, which I absolutely love. It's nowhere in any signs or anything, but that is and I think that a couple people maybe have their own names, but that's the one that sticks with me.
Gotcha. It's funny. So I assume the cow at the Smithsonian, is it completely finished, unlike our cow here?
Yeah, so our cow here is viewed from just the front. So it's about 3/4 around, and then that extra butter that would be used for the backside of the cow is what we use to sculpt all of the theme sculptures. But at the Smithsonian, the exhibit is in a rotunda. So it's the cooler is designed to be glass on 7 of the 8 sides of the round. And so she is fully sculpted all the way around.
Okay. Is it about the same temperature, cooler setup? I mean, talk a little bit about the process of telling them, hey, I have a sculpture, but it needs to be refrigerated.
Yeah, so when they came to visit the Iowa State Fair, they came into the cooler and they looked around, they looked at the size of the door, and they're like, how are we gonna get this cow to DC? And so we talked through that this cow doesn't fit through the door. She's sculpted right here. Every year a new cow, but she's sculpted right here in this space. And so then we talked about maybe sculpting her somewhere in the Des Moines area and then shipping her in a refrigerated semi. And then when we talked about the facility of the Renwick Gallery, it is a century-old mansion basically that was built to house art and has been converted into an art museum, but it doesn't have a large elevator. It has an elevator, but it's not for, like, a forklift wouldn't fit into it. So if we were to bring her into the Renwick already sculpted, it would mean like human power carrying her up a staircase. And that didn't seem very feasible. So what we landed on was a sculpture in place. And so the cooler is much the same as here with the air conditioner unit, but they had to do some special things. They had to have it quieter than this. Like this here, it's a little bit noisy, and in a museum, it needs to be whisper tones. And so they had to build a unit to quiet the fans. They also needed to not have any cords that would, because you could walk all the way around the cooler. So they had to think about all those different components that are unique to their building. And then also it's 42 degrees in this space, and that's what's comfortable for me to sculpt in, and also keeps the butter cold and not melted. What we found is that the exhibit at the Renwick, which is on display, has been on display for a year. It started last August and will end on September 7th. We had to think about what the right temperature to keep a butter sculpture for that long of time. And so we initially had it at 42 degrees, which is great. It doesn't, at freezing, the butter tends to crack. But at 42 degrees, there was a little bit of like growth of, like dust would gather and a little bit of mold was growing. So we'd take that off and repair it. But we tried a little bit lower temperature, and then we had cracking. So just like kind of playing with the temperature. And it was a unique experience to work with the conservators there.
While you were, from what I understand, you were sculpting it in the Smithsonian, right? And that was when you were playing with temperature?
So while we were there for about a week to sculpt it last July, and we did decide at that time to keep it at 42 degrees so that it wouldn't crack. We played with lighting. That was something that was new, because here we just have a set of lights, but they had like more like theater lights inside the cooler. We could play with the warm and the cool tones. But it wasn't until like 3 or 4 months later that we started to notice the aging of the butter. And so that's when we started playing with the temperature. And then in February, I went back to do some repairs with the conservators. And then I went back just this July to do some final touch-ups. So all of that time. So throughout the year, I was able to visit and do those projects. There are lots of state fairs that have butter sculptures. And I feel really honored to be able to represent butter sculpting and the Iowa State Fair at the Smithsonian. It is a tradition that goes back to the turn of the century and before. And so to be part of that tradition and bring it to DC was really exciting. There were a lot of people that have visited the display who've never seen a butter sculpture before, so that was really exciting. But the entire exhibit represented over 200 works of art from across the country, from rodeos, from powwows, from fairs and festivals that represent a multitude of cultures and traditions that represent our entire country. And it felt really good to be a part of, to represent our tradition here in the company of all that diversity. Was so cool. And the entire exhibit was just amazing, and I was honored to be a part of that. I also don't want to forget to say that my daughters, Hannah and Grace, were just beginning their senior year in college when they came with me to sculpt it. They've been apprenticing with me since they were 14. They're a very accomplished artist as well. And so to be able to work on that together in such a transformative time of their lives, and to have this experience as collaborative sculptors was a really amazing experience.